Good morning, everyone, and welcome to day 3 of this DAB digital radio webinar series, which WorldDAB is organizing jointly with the Arab States Broadcasting Union and the Asia Pacific Broadcasting Union. Coming up today, we have lots of more interesting presentations. We will hear from Dr. Lawrie Hallett, who will tell us about some developments in DAB delivery technology. Then you will hear from myself. I'll give an update on automotive activities from WorldDAB. Dr. Les Sabel will give us an update on DAB in the Asia Pacific. And then we will hear from Mr. Mohsen Ghommam from ASBU, and he will give us an update on DAB in the Middle East and North Africa. And then we will have some news from Africa, where we're seeing a lot of activity recently. And we will have an update on the trials that are in progress in Ghana. And finally, time allowing, we will have a panel session hosted by Les on a discussion on the DAB rollout process and current observations. The whole area of DAB in cars is a major area of focus for WorldDAB, and there is a lot of activity and a lot of progress. And so much so that we feel confident in saying, that DAB in cars now, it's really reaching maturity. And the progress and adoption of DAB in markets around the world is what is driving the uptake of DAB in cars and vice versa. So we can see that lots of markets are launching beyond Europe in all of the countries, and you heard something about that earlier in this webinar series. And also in Europe, the mature markets are very much where you'll hear more about later in this present, but they're very much driving the progress in DAB. So to the extent that DAB is a standard feature in all cars in Europe, 96% of new cars in Europe come with DAB. And we reckon that that's probably actually more like 99 or 100%. There's just an anomaly in the measurement. And there are some vehicles we can't measure, but we feel pretty sure that it's up pretty much around all new cars in Europe coming with DAB. And why is that important for people beyond Europe? Well, it means that it has never been easier than before for new markets to launch DAB+. And it's also inspirational for other markets launching that regulation will help in driving the uptake of DAB in cars. And what we're seeing at least in the mature markets in Europe is that DAB is emerging as the key platform for in-car radio listening. Here's an example from the UK, where you can see over 50% of in-car listening is on DAB, and a major percentage still on broadcast FM, and a smaller, much smaller slice on online and apps. So of course that is shifting, but certainly not quickly enough anytime soon. And there's a strong case, therefore, for maintaining broadcast and, in our case, digital radio. DAB, as I mentioned, is a standard feature in all cars and in Europe, and that meant that there's about 10 million new cars with DAB in Europe. That's what it translates as. All the major automotive manufacturers support DAB+. They're nearly all members of WorldDAB, and you can see some of the brands here, and this is not an exhaustive list. There are many more brands as well. And not to forget about vehicles that are already on the road. There is a wide range of DAB receivers for converting your car, and this was particularly driven by the switchover in Norway, where they have already switched off FM. So there was a lot of impetus and a lot of motivation to make sure that everyone had DAB, and this pushed forward the market of aftermarket devices. And also we see the same level of activity now in Switzerland as they prepare to switch off. The public broadcaster there will switch off FM by the end of this year. So it's essential, therefore, for all those reasons, to keep DAB in the car. and it's essential that it remains relevant. And why so? Well, because DAB offers greater choice. And here we can see an example from the more mature markets in Europe, where we see DAB offers on average about 7 times as many services as on FM and on analog. And also, as you've heard already from Les and others in this webinar series, DAB provides a high quality user experience. It offers simple navigation, it can offer strong visuals, and it leverages the benefits of hybrid radio, which is more and more important given the emergence and further penetration of connected cars. WorldDAB collaborated with these organizations in 2021. You probably heard us speak about this before, but it remains very, very relevant and very important. And it tells us that this research we commissioned with Edison Research, so a very independent, reputable research body. And we did it in partnership with Australia, US, and European broadcasters and radio player. And basically what we found, and we refreshed the research again in 2022, and it was still consistent, that 90% of car buyers said clearly that broadcast radio should be standard in every vehicle. This was loud and clear, and car makers are listening and paying heed to this research. I should mention that WorldDAB has a very active automotive working group, and you can see here that the chair of the group is from Volkswagen, the software, the entertainment division, Cariad, part of Volkswagen Group, and the chair of the aftermarket devices group is from the public broadcaster in Switzerland. And so we thank very much Gregor Perch and Roberto Moro for all of their work and support that they do. So Gregor chairs the User Experience Working Group, and it works on improving the user interface for in-car digital radio. And the Aftermarket Devices Group supports manufacturers and promoters of DAB aftermarket products. There's a lot of information available coming out of the work of those two groups. It is on the WorldDAB website. If you have difficulty navigating or finding where it is, do please contact the WorldDAB project office, and we'll be very happy to point you in the right direction. But there is a lot of really useful resources there. So the automotive working group, it's available you can join as a WorldDAB member. It's a very active group, and the meetings, they promote research and discuss the guidelines. There's a lot of ongoing regular meetings happen every quarter, and the aftermarket device is similar, and they also do workshops. We do a major automotive conference every year and a series of workshops throughout the year as well. So as I said at the start, a major area of focus for WorldDAB. And I mentioned just now the WorldDAB Automotive Conference, and we just held the last edition of this conference in June, and some excellent presentations, and they're all freely available on our WorldDAB YouTube channel. If you just go into YouTube and search for WorldDAB Automotive 2024, you'll find all the presentations, the video recordings, and you'll also find the PDFs on the WorldDAB website. A further testament to the work that we're doing in the auto space, the WorldDAB membership continues to grow year on year, and this is just since September 2023. I'm showing you here on this slide 14 new members, and as you can see, a lot of them are, not all, but several of them are related to the automotive sector. So WorldDAB currently has 122 members from almost 40 countries, and this does continue to increase. I mentioned the automotive resources. When you go to this page, that you can see the link at the bottom of this slide, you'll find all various fact sheets and guidelines. And so, as I said, lots of information, and you should go there and read that. So in conclusion, cars are a major growth factor for DAB+, and DAB brings benefits to the listener, the car driver, the listeners, and it brings benefits to the broadcasters and also to the car makers. And so WorldDAB is collaborating across the auto and broadcaster sectors for broadcast radio's future in the car. So that is, with that, you know, please do stay in touch, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that was a very, very good session at the automotive workshop this year. A lot of new information and a lot of great developments going on. And automotive, as Bernie's mentioned, automotive really does drive listening in many countries. Okay, now we're going to switch to new ways to deliver DAB+. We have Dr. Lawrie Hallett from Future Digital Norfolk. So Lawrie, please share your screen and give us out your presentation. Thank you.
Thanks very much, everyone. And whatever time it is of day, it's very nice to be with you. I thought I should just give you a quick background about why anyone should perhaps be listening to what I am about to talk about. I have a background in broadcast production before I set up an independent engineering company, which these days no one's ever heard of. It's Phoenix Communications, but that morphed into Radica Broadcast Systems, which has been running for the last 20 years or so. When I left Radica, I worked for the Community Media Association before moving into broadcast regulation. I worked for Ofcom between 2004 and 2012, and specifically there I got involved in the licensing, planning and rollout of UK DAB. Sorry, just make my screen work a little better. That's jumping around, I'm sorry. So drawing on that experience, I was asked by WorldDAB to write a report exploring the recent evolution of new opportunities in relation to the delivery of DAB and DAB+ services. And that report, New Approaches to DAB, Developments in DAB+ Delivery Technology and Techniques, is available to WorldDAB members on the organisation's website. So part of the reason that I got involved in this is that I've been running with colleagues in Norfolk, where I live in the UK, a DAB multiplex, which was experimental to start with since 2015. It's slightly unusual in that it's set up as a not-for-profit company, and it provides digital audio broadcasting, audio services and data services in the Greater Norwich area. We were awarded a long-term DAB broadcasting license for Norwich and the surrounding areas in 2022, and we serve a small audience, some 300,000 adults, using a 2-transmitter single-frequency network. It's an offshoot of the local community radio station, and it currently carries some 20 services, mostly in DAB+, although there are some legacy DAB services still carried, and a couple of test channels. And part of our work is that we provide support for other prospective not-for-profit DAB operators, both in the UK and further afield. So the system that we operate in Norfolk is primarily on the basis of taking a very low-cost approach, but it's still engineered to maximise reliability. We use a combination of open source and commercial equipment. It has redundant data links, and they are between our sites and between that and the data centres. And we use a combination of fibre to the premises, fibre to the cabinet, and microwave-based connectivity. The key thing, I think, and this is where we start to link into the recent evolution of DAB, is that we use secondary level sites rather than primary broadcast locations. Now, clearly, the engineers amongst you will know that there are disadvantages to that, but there are also incredible cost advantages. And when you're working at a relatively small scale of coverage, the benefits outweigh the disbenefits in terms of limited coverage. We also operate our contracts on a best endeavours basis, which normally means, excuse me, our uptime is pretty much the same as our commercial rivals. Indeed, there have been times when it's been better. But we don't guarantee uptime, because to do that then inflates the costs for the broadcast services using our transmission system. So let's just get into the WorldDAB report, which I think is the key to this. It draws primarily on the UK experience of experimenting and then implementing what was called small-scale DAB. But it also takes into account related experience elsewhere. The UK was fortunate that the broadcast regulator back in 2012 was quite quick to identify that there was a real potential to improve and increase the diversity of services which DAB could carry, bringing in that smaller group of community and smaller commercial services, which hitherto had just not been able to get onto DAB, either because of capacity issues or because of the costs involved. And of course, as we migrate towards a digital future for broadcast radio, the important thing is that we don't leave anyone behind, because although the audiences for smaller scale commercial broadcasters and for community broadcasters may be relatively small, they are not insignificant. And to keep that broad ecosystem of all the different radio services available in one place meant there had to be a route for those smaller services to come on board and be part of the DAB journey. The report explains that small-scale DAB is both evolutionary and complementary to other forms of DAB and DAB+ delivery. It is not intended to be a revolutionary approach. It's fully compatible with all the DAB broadcasting standards, and it's there simply to add another layer of access to broadcasters and broaden the choice of broadcast services available to listeners. And the report emphasises that the key objective here is really to increase the availability of broadcast radio services. There's no point in doing it if it doesn't add something to the mix. And the changes there are really in terms of practice and through the lowering of the overall cost, the CapEx costs and the OpEx costs. So both what it costs to build it and what it costs to operate it. And much of that is about things like, for example, the choice of sites, the choice of your delivery methods of data to the sites. And it also comes down to how much capacity and capability is there within the broadcast operating group to carry the engineering costs themselves. It does also make the important point that the approach is not intrinsically linked to the use of open source technologies. Part of the reason I think that people saw that link was that in the original Ofcom experiments back in 2012 through to the mid-2000 and 2000 teens, Ofcom provided open source equipment. There are people better placed to comment on this than I am, but I would say that open source technology can be very useful, but you need a big skill set within your organization in order to operate it. And this is where, sorry, again, my mouse is misbehaving. It really does, the report, note that there's no one size fits all solution and that individual broadcasters should be free to pick the opportunities best suited to their own set of circumstances. So, for example, if you have someone who is a great Linux guru living in your locale and wants to get involved, then open source might not be a problem for you. But for most broadcasters, what are they interested in? They're interested in broadcasting services, in delivering carrying capacity for other broadcasters. And that often means, I would say it probably predominantly means that commercial solutions are probably the way to go. The other thing about the issue of the phrase small-scale DAB is that it doesn't really mean very much, in that the approaches suggested are not necessarily linked to any particular scale of coverage. There may be a limitation if you start to look at secondary sites in terms of where you can roll these out, but for the tier of broadcasting that the UK was looking at, and some other European countries in particular are looking at, it's to fill in the gaps. And that can be done with these lower cost sites. And going back to the point of open source, really, because of the difficulties of running open source, unless you have the skill set available to you, it really sees that this new approach to DAB is a commercial opportunity for commercial equipment providers, manufacturers, and service providers. And so it highlights the importance of an effective regulatory oversight and support. So this is something where in the UK, Ofcom started to look at different ways of reusing a scarce spectrum resource. In an ideal world, of course, you would have allocations, primary allocations for all your DAB services, and they would not be in contest with other potential service users. In the UK, there was a lot of secondary DAB frequency availability, which had not been used. It was there, it was in the plan, but because of difficulties of, for example, the use of radio microphones or other spectrum users, it had been, I suspect to a certain extent, put in the too difficult category back in the early 2000s. But when it was recognized that there was this great demand for additional services, the regulator started to look at that and see if there were ways to use this service, some of it interleaved, some of it which had been lying fallow for some while, and some of it which was simply not suitable to use for high power services, but could be used for low power services. And because the regulator was proactively involved in this process, it did mean that more and more frequency resources were available to be made available. And I should say that now, if you look at the number of DAB multiplexes across the UK, the small scale multiplexes, from an experimental base of 1 and then 15, we're up to the 6th round of broadcasting. I think about another 20 licenses were just awarded last week. And so we're looking at pretty much above 100 such multiplexes already operational. So that regulatory oversight and support also is about facilitating the way in which licenses are applied for. It's also about having a regulator that can be spoken to and about the technical resources, about the complexities of, for example, antenna design. And I would say that our experience with Ofcom is that understandably they took a cautious approach to start with, and were very worried about issues around, for example, hole punching in existing services. But as the experience on the ground grew and we realized that the DAB transmission facilities were perhaps more robust and the signal was more robust than perhaps theory might suggest, the regulator has allowed power increases, relaxation of antenna patterns, because in the real world it has not had a great deal of impact on the delivery of services, and it's been quite hard to find examples where there may be impacts on existing broadcasters. But it's also important to recognise the continued importance of engineering best practices. These new approaches, these evolutions of DAB are bringing in people who perhaps have less in the way of engineering skills. And again, this comes back to the point that service providers in particular are able to support the implementation of these new DAB multiplexes and make sure that where you have small groups where perhaps the engineering skills are not there, these external commercial providers can make sure that the standards are indeed maintained. And I think the final conclusion was that, you know, this term small scale DB is not particularly accurate and it's not particularly helpful. I'm very happy to answer any questions, but I think we'll just wrap up by saying that the report to WorldDAB makes a number of recommendations, but of course it's entirely up to WorldDAB itself to decide what to do these, and they include, and one thing that's already been done is the setting up of a subcommittee to provide advice and promote the widening participation in DAB broadcasting for smaller scale broadcasters. It also suggests that it might be sensible to publish a primer for regulators and broadcasters alike, those perhaps who have little experience of DAB to date, to help share experience and share best practice. It also suggested that it might be good to look more at international case studies, again, furthering good practice and share knowledge, looking, for example, at commercial broadcasting companies and seeing how they adapt to bring in more of these small scale broadcasters where perhaps their previous involvement was with larger scale national and regional broadcasters. It also suggested that perhaps developing demonstration technology kit for jurisdictions wanting to trial the technology, again, perhaps with commercial bodies, might be very helpful. And finally, also sort of to offer development support specifically for regulators. Regulators, I mean, I would say this, wouldn't I? Because I'm an ex-regulator, but I think regulators have a very difficult job sometimes, both keeping up with technological developments and trying to share the frequency spectrum cake in a way that is fair to all comers. So I'll, at that stage, wrap up and say thank you very much for listening. Thank you for the invitation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Lawrie. That's very, very interesting. I'll note in some of the research I've done recently, the county I used to live in when I lived in UK, Wiltshire, is about to have a so-called small-scale DAB, local DAB, multiplex established, and that's going to take add probably around 20 plus services, community services mainly, to an existing bouquet of about 77 national and commercial services. So it is a significant choice increase, and especially when you're involved with local activities. Community radio is often very much a go-to place for your listening services. So thanks for that. Questions to Lawrie, please put them in the Q&A. Look forward to those. Now we're going to move on to some international updates. We're going to start with me. I'll give you a quick update on the major movers in the Asia Pacific. So I'll share my screen. Okay, great. Okay, so we're going to look at Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Australia. Probably the biggest movers in the Asia Pacific at this moment in time. Although I do note there's members from broadcasters in many other Asia Pacific countries at this workshop, certainly yesterday and today, so throughout this workshop. So I'm very, very pleasing to see, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon. But I'll focus on these big four at the moment. So let's start with Thailand. Thailand's been doing a really great job. It's been championed by the regulator, the NBTC. They started a Bangkok trial in April of 2019 and upgraded it from 8 kilowatts to 18 kilowatts in August of 22, with 12 Bangkok radio stations. And they're now currently planning an expansion of that one main site with additional 4 sites. If you've been to Bangkok or seen any pictures, you'll know there are very many very tall buildings in Bangkok. And my last count, there was over 40 buildings that were actually higher than the transmitter tower, or that one transmitter tower, that main site. And that causes a lot of shadowing in the coverage of the city. And those 4 additional sites will go a long way to resolving those coverage black spots. And hopefully we'll start to see talk about commercial launches hopefully next year. Now, in the meantime, however, there's been a regional DAB trial, and you can see on the map here the sites here: Chiang Mai, Konkan, Chonburi, and Songkhla. And that was a very successful trial, and 3 of those sites have 10 kilowatt transmissions and very good coverage of the surrounding area. So the 12 Bangkok services were used as a basis, and an additional 6 regional services were inserted into that ensemble for that trial. Now, last year there was a national high-level plan delivered. That was delivered in 2023 by Thammasat University in conjunction with services from myself and Progera. Very comprehensive high-level study. However, the detailed design is still to be done. It did show, however, the sort of pricing and identified the network architectures which were best suited for a national plan. And there's also talk about exploration for a private broadcasting ensemble in Konkan, that is up in the northeast of Thailand, which has a very, very active community radio sector. So again, we're seeing the community radio sector playing a big part in the digital radio rollout. Let's move on to Indonesia. Okay, so in Indonesia, the Ministry of Information and Communications have approved regulations on terrestrial sound broadcasting, and they have adopted both DAB+ and DRM. So commercial and community license will continue to be based on service area, with only RRI, the public service broadcaster, being able to provide nationwide services. That's what they do in analog, and that's what they've decided to do in digital as well. As you no doubt aware, every country is different, and that goes for regulation in radio, of course, as well. WorldDAB is undertaking a series of webinars for RRI. We've done 2 already, and we hope to do a couple more in the coming months to help with education for broadcasters, government, listeners, and the general radio ecosystem. And it's quite likely that the Department of Ministry and Information, ComInfo, will do their own workshop as well. So there's a lot of interest and activity in Indonesia. And finally, ComInfo is looking at a multi-mode receiver profile, and that's drafting minimum requirements at the moment. We'll see how that goes. We do know that there are plenty of DAB+ receivers out there, however. Malaysia. So Malaysia is a bit of a stop-start sort of situation. We had lots of activities a few years ago, but they died down, and it's started up again. And that's mainly driven by broadcasters becoming frustrated with the lack of revenue increases from streaming radio. And we see that around the world. In actual fact, we certainly see that in Australia, while in fact, you see some of the statistics coming out of Rajar, for example, in UK, CRA in Australia and other places. And you tend to see that streaming, while it's very useful, of course, there's lots of application for it, it tends to plateau in the long term at around 10 to 15, 20%, depending on the country. Just emphasizing that broadcast radio is, alive and kicking and moving forward very well. So the broadcasters in Malaysia want to give DAB a kickstart. So an organization called Media Lab Alliance is now leading a bid with MCMC, the Malaysian regulator, for a new pilot project. And that Media Lab Alliance team is preparing a study of global status, of the current status around the world, and we'll deliver that later this year. We do note that DAB+ has increasing support at this point in time from RTM, the public service broadcaster, as well as private broadcasters. And I know a number, and one in particular, network operator, that has been trying to get a project off the ground for a while. So there's there's a lot of interest even in that side as well. And MCMC is considering the standardization of DAB+ through its Malaysian Technical Standards Forum Berhad, who will be hosting a webinar for Malaysian broadcasters next month. Let's finally go into Australia, my country. We've had DAB+ here. We're the second country in the world to launch DAB+. We did it in 2009 with 5 capital cities. We now have 10 major sites covering around 68% of the population of Australia. We're a very urban-driven population, particularly on the eastern seaboard. And we do have actually more trials going on, in particular in Tasmania, down in the south of Australia, in a place called Launceston, and ongoing marketing campaigns as well. And we'll talk maybe a little bit more about this during the panel session, the value of marketing in the overall process of rollout and long-term delivery, for that matter. So that's all I'm going to talk about today in the Asia Pacific. And now I think we'll turn to the Arab States Broadcasting Union. I'll stop sharing my screen Let me get that. Right, stopping sharing there. And we have Mr. Mohsen Ghommam from the ASBU Technical Department. He's the head of the transmission department at ASBU. And please, over to you, Ghommam, for your presentation on the status of DAB in the Arab states.
Regarding welcome for everybody. Regarding the update of the DAB Plus in the Arab region, mainly the Middle East and the North Africa. Please,
Here we go.
Let's go. The other. So ASBU actions on regarding this subject, this issue, is that ASBU has recommended that all concerned bodies and parties, they have made some recommendation and sent them to the main regulator in the Arab world, which the name is Arab Spectrum Management Group, ASMG. And the recommendation is about integration of the specification of terrestrial digital audio broadcastings in all car receivers in the Arab regions, because you know that in the Arab region, the radio is listened mainly in the cars. And in our recommendation, it was the recommendation deals with the integration of this specification since 2020 year. So the necessary specification have also been developed to integrate the Arabic language profile into receivers. Please, you. Go, please. So I will now go country by country. The other slide, please. Okay, first we begin with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia have started from January 2021. And in their regulation, the automotive radio receivers are required to include DAB Plus by 2024. That means since this year. The pilot project launched in Riyadh, at Dammam, and Jeddah with 5 kilowatt transmitters. So it's high power transmitters. This year and the next years, we will have 6 other cities following and to improve the covers. Please, the other slide. Emirates also is one of the pioneer on the region regarding making specifications since many years. So DAB Plus was specified and published many years ago. The pilot projects now is starting from Abu Dhabi since April 2024. In Dubai, it will follow by September 2024. It's a bucket of 8 radio channels, and all new cars are supposed to be equipped with DAB Plus receivers by 2024. So the other slide, please. Oman is also doing a big job on this matter. So the trial launched by 2019, and the automotive radio receivers are required to include DAB Plus by 2025. The pilot projects with 6 sites is planned for 2024. So many steps to reach the global digitization of the radio, all the radio network, by switching and putting about 73 sites with the suitable transmitters power. The other side. So Tunisia has also have made a big job regarding DAB Plus. Now Tunisia have a regular DAB Plus service, which was launched since 2019, and they reach about 75% of coverage. So please keep the slide, please. So the multiplex in Tunisia is about 18 radio station on air, and the regulation of automotive market is still ongoing. Next slide, please. Algeria have launched a trial since 2018, and they are now planning underway to extend the DAB Plus covers. Most of Algeria, about 68% of the capital of Algeria, Algiers, is covered. The next slide, please. Bahrain has tried since 2016 with four radio channels, 4 services, 60% of population covered. In Qatar, the trial has been launched in 2019, and they have 10 DAB Plus service and on air. And in Jordan, they have made some trials on 2017 with 5 DAB Plus services, and they are still in Jordan thinking about OTT, DAB, and so on. So the other slide, please. As you see here, the region, the Arab region, there is a lot of work to improve the coverages, to master the technology. And the technical committee of ASBU has forward specification of DAB Plus since 2018. And we have recommended that all the members to apply this specification in automotive since 2020. The other slide, please. So this specification that ASBU has approved is suitable with the European requirements, with the ETSI main requirements on this issue. And they have the criteria to use the Arabic text profile, which has been, the work has been done with the WorldDAB experts. We thank them on that work. And the specification include AM reception and FM reception. The other slide, please. Finally, the experience in the Arab region is growing and growing. I think in the next years it will be, we will have many new services, DAB Plus services, but some main questions are remaining regarding the regulatory framework, which best model we could implement, how to cooperate between the stakeholders, because DAB Plus is based on multiplex concept, and when we say multiplex, that means one frequency is not allocated for only one channel or for one broadcasters. It is for many broadcasters. It could be 18 broadcasters, as we have seen yesterday with the Gateware new equipments. You could put in the same, that means in many buckets and the same transmitters. So we need new collaboration, new cooperation between these stakeholders, broadcasters, multiplex operators, the network operator, the frequency regulation authority. Which best model we could use? This is a matter, an issue that we need to resolve and find the solution, and we inspire from the other good experience from Australia, from the other countries. And the other issue also is how to cooperate between public and private broadcast in the same multiplex, because we need, for example, to have the same network to save money, to have an economic solution. So the other technical point, which is very important, I think, to implement at the beginning of each project in DAB Plus systems is the service following. The service following is very, and I have tested here in Tunisia because I'm installed in Tunisia. It's very important to install what we call it the switching between FM network and DAB network. I think it's a good application, good specification made by the DAB forum and DAB technical specification. I mean, we could balance, you could switch from coverage of DAB to another coverage of FM coverage. That means the switching is automatically. I think such a functionality is required. It's very important to start with such a project. And the other point, maybe I will leave it here, is how we could do and we could arrange with that means the old cars. I think with the old cars, there's some solutions. We have only dealing with the new cars, but new cars is supposed to be implemented with DAB plus receivers. But for the older cars, I think it's not a problem because that we have converters. Some converters, I don't know. I think on the WorldDAB site, it is mentioned these converters, and you could convert WorldDAB signal to FM signal. I hope all the best for our DAB Plus project in our Arab region. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mohsen. That's a really great update of what's going on in the Arab states world. And it's very good to see great progress, particularly in Saudi Arabia, who are really moving forward fast. But not to forget Tunisia, which is, that was the first one, really. And you've done a great job there. Now, we're going to move on to Africa now. And just before we go to Gabriel Kwofie from Ghana, I just want to show this one slide. So I'll just share my screen again. And here we see the DAB status that our president, Jacqueline Beerhorst, put up on day one. And I just thought I'd use this to emphasize the level of activity that's going on in both the Arab states. We can see up the top there from Tunisia to Saudi, but interest from a load of other countries in the North African region, but also in the Central and Southern African areas. South Africa's been having trials for some years, but more recently we have Uganda having a pilot project, Senegal having a pilot project, and of course Ghana with a pilot project. So this is really exciting times in Africa, and I'd now like to invite Gabriel to share his presentation and give us an update on how things are moving forward in Ghana. So please, over to you, Gabriel.
Dr. Sabel. Thank you very much, Dr. Sabel. My name is Gabriel, as he has said, and I'll be giving you an update. I'm sorry, can you see my screen?
Yes, that's all good.
Okay. So I'll be giving you an update of the digital audio broadcasting DAB Plus trial in Ghana. And the presentation outline will follow the shown trend. We'll look at the band occupancy, the trial itself. We'll consider the objectives for the trial. We'll look at an overview of the trial setup, the technical setup. We'll look at the frequency band for DAB in Ghana. And then we'll consider the selected audio channels, the benefits of DAB. We'll look at also the challenges and then the next steps and timelines. So as you can see, the FM band is congested in the major cities, 3 major cities in Ghana. That's Accra, Kumasi, and Takoradi. And there's a large number of FM radio applications that we receive almost weekly, and sometimes even, I should say, daily, that we are unable to honor. We are hoping that DAB, in fact, it's given us a lot of promise to be able to help us solve this problem. On your screen now, you can see the FM band occupancy in Accra. and you see the activity in the band. Shows you there's a lot of activity, and basically we need to free up some space, which we can't do, but with DAB, we can be able to entertain more radio stations. So the launch was done in 22nd August 2023. It was done for 6 months, and then it's been extended from that point, that is from February this year, 2024, to December 2024. The launch is in Kumasi and Accra. Kumasi is in the central belt of the country, and Accra is on the coast of the country. The objectives for DAB trial are mainly to test the features, the coverage characteristics, and other technical metrics of DAB to inform frequency planning and regulatory standards, to establish the quality aspects of DAB and the transmission parameters which delivers optimum quality, to ascertain the issues that may emerge with multiple stations sharing the same infrastructure with a single transmission network provider, consider market readiness and required market structure to inform the development of an appropriate authorization framework for the DAB. Lastly, we want to determine the requirements for the development of minimum specifications for DAB receivers in collaboration with the Ghana Standards Authority. So this is to show you the technical setup for the trial. We have the stations on the left providing feed to the DAB processor and encoder, and then it goes there to the head-end multiplexer, where it goes to the IP switch, and then it goes to the IP network link straight to the transmitter, and then it goes over to the antennas on the tower. We have a backup, which is the satellite link, which goes from the feed from the switch to the uplink, down to the downlink, and then the satellite modulator to the transmitter, and then to the towers. I must point out that we have and use Aldina antennas, and our transmitter is a Root and Schwartz, and the multiplexer is a Panida multiplexer. Here is a quick video on the establishment of DAB in Ghana, and it should take a short time to roll.
The heart of Ghana, where innovation meets creativity, stands a beacon of technological advancement. Welcome to the Ajangote Digital Terrestrial Television (DTT) and Digital Audio Broadcasting (DAB+ primary transmission site serving the capital city of Ghana and its environs. This remarkable site is powered by an impressive 160 kilowatts of clean, sustainable solar energy, ensuring uninterrupted service 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The Ajangote site is the lifeline of broadcasting in Accra, serving the majority of Accra and its outskirts. This is a transmission site for both digital terrestrial television (DTT) and digital audio broadcasting (DAB+ in Accra. These transmission sites play a vital role in bringing you over 45 DTT channels and 18 DAB channels in Accra and Kumasi, delivering news, education, entertainment, and sport right to your screens and speakers. But what sets these sites apart isn't just its cutting-edge technology. It's a symbol of progress, innovation, and commitment to the people of Ghana. Say goodbye to interference noise on your radio. With the newly launched DAB+ pilot project, radio stations can now reach more cities beyond their immediate locations, providing you with a broader range of program content featuring 18 channels. This pilot positions Ghana as the first country in West Africa to deploy DAB+. Accra and Kumasi DTT and DAB transmission sites where the future of broadcasting shines brighter for you and for Ghana.
So that was a short video on the DAB installation in Ghana. The frequency band we are using for DAB is 174 to 230 megahertz. And we have 18 radio stations providing feed for the trial. We are actually asking them to reapply for the second round of the trial. So we have 11 of them in Accra and 7 of them in Kumasi, which is in the Middle Belt. DAB benefits in Ghana, I'm sure you are aware of these, but still, let's go through it a little bit. The DAB provides good quality audio, support for multiple radio channels, that is improved spectrum efficiency, and support for value-added data services. It will utilize a different frequency band from the FM band, which is the reason why we are adapting it. And services can be delivered simultaneously with FM. There are up to 18 stations that we are using, like I mentioned, 11 in Kumasi, in Accra, and 7 in Kumasi. Stations on DAB can extend their coverage beyond their current FM coverage area. It provides improved quality, enhanced interactive services, and ease of selecting DAB stations to listen to. So the main challenges that we are facing has to do with that DAB receivers are available in the country, but not widely distributed. So we are working on getting more receivers into the country, especially the vehicle receivers. I believe at the beginning of the talk, Benny made mention of the fact that the audio in cars is a good driver is a really good driver for sparing the spread of DAB. Well, we have issues with the car receivers, so we are getting more and more different types of car receivers to make sure that we get the spread of DAB to continue successfully. Also, there's comparable audio quality of FM and DAB, and this may not incentivize consumers to voluntarily acquire new receivers which supports DAB. Also, internet radio streaming, music streaming, and podcasts are growing in Ghana and represent an alternative to DAB from the consumer perspective. So that's another challenge that we have with the establishment and spread of DAB in Ghana. The next steps, we are continuing to promote DAB through trial during the trial period for listeners to acquire receivers. All the DAB stations that are on the trial are required to do jingles and LPMs to ensure that consumers are made more and more aware of the DAB presence in the country. So we are intensifying public awareness campaign in that regard. And there's continuous monitoring of the DAB transmission parameters for optimization. Assessment of feedback from listeners is also going on. We are trying to get as much feedback from consumers to know what their concerns are and how we can better optimize the experience of DAB in the country. There's work being done on expanding the DAB trial in other regions. So currently we are looking at also doing an expansion to Jamasi in the Ashanti region, which is also close to Kumasi, and the procurement process is still in progress. There's a need for acquisition of more receivers, like I mentioned earlier on, and this is also currently ongoing. As far as regulatory framework is concerned, we are working on selection and award procedure documents, and we'll be using the beauty contest approach. We'll be considering and evaluating the business and technical submissions, as well as the oral presentations of applications. The authorization period for each DAB program channel authorization shall last for 5 years. And we are considering the use of optimal pricing schemes for licenses to encourage service take-up. Timelines. Currently, the DAB monitoring is ongoing. We have new DAB sites also being worked on, and we are hoping that by August it will begin. And then, of course, I mentioned earlier that procurement is still in progress. By August, the site should be deployed, and by October, everything should be completed for signal measurement campaign to commence in October. We intend to keep going on till December 22nd, till December 2024, where we'll be done with the signal measurement campaign. Public education and sensitization is also ongoing, and it will continue till the end of the year. So thank you very much for your time. And if you have any questions, I'll be here.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. It's a fantastic project that's going on in Ghana, and I can see it's actually moving forward from the trial stage into an expanded trial, and then I have no doubt will move into full-time operation, especially with the expansion of your network, which is already being planned. Fantastic. And also your regulation process, it looks like it's being developed at the moment and pretty well moving forward. So that's great. We're going to have a little panel session now for about 20 minutes or so. We're fortunate enough to have panelists from the last few days as well, not only the ones from today, but we do have Oscar Hugh from Gates Air, Lars Petter from Panida, of course, Bernie, and Roberto Barry from Aldina with us to answer questions as necessary. I've got a few questions to throw around and see how we go. But I thought what you were talking about then before about receivers, Gabriel, was quite interesting in that it seems that you need to get more into the community. And I was just wondering if that is an issue for you, and do you need any assistance there that perhaps WorldDAB could provide, for example, some guidance or something? How do you propose moving forward to get more receivers into listeners' hands?
Okay, so to begin with, we had some receivers that were procured and sent around by the authority to different consumers all over the place. We had about 1,100, and we are going to have to step up the number going forward. But we realized with our measurements that the car audio was a bit problematic because the moving vehicles did not get good reception going forward. But we realized also that that is a very important driver for the spread of DAB in the country. So we are working on getting more and more receivers into the system. Of course, we have people who come into the country with their own receivers, but we want to increase the market base in the country as well. So if there's any source of help that you can give, well, if there's going to be any form of funding to increase the number of receivers, especially for automobiles, that would be great. That would be great. But besides that, we've done quite a significant amount of work that has been documented, and moving forward, we are hoping to get things going on more smoothly than the previous first 6 months of trial.
Okay, that's really interesting. And I think one thing I picked up there was actually understanding the coverage you have of the existing transmission. Accra is quite a large city, with no doubt from what I've seen, various different hills or mountains and obstructions. And that's one thing that's really, really important before you do endeavour to increase the number of listeners, is to make sure you get your coverage across the area well covered. And that, of course, means you need to do field trials and field tests and drive testing and things like that, which I'm sure you're undertaking in your measurement campaigns that you've already mentioned. So, you know, that all fits hand in hand. And I'm sure that we can discuss, you know, other receiver strategies later offline. But, you know, that's obviously an area which is of great importance to not just yourself, but to other expanding countries as well. So thank you for that. That's great.
If I could add to that, Les,
Please do, Bernie. Please do.
Thank you, Gabriel, for the excellent update, and it really is a wonderful template for other markets in Africa and indeed anywhere who are launching DAB to look at the approach, the orderly and well thought out approach that the NCA, along with the broadcasters in Ghana, how they're doing things. So I really champion that. And regarding the receivers in cars, and I know that you're probably, I think you're already doing this, but just to emphasize the importance of talking to the importers and the car sector and keeping them informed about the activities and the licensing and the planning and investments that are happening on DAB, and that the cars coming into Ghana need to be the ones that have DAB, and you know, there's certainly, as we know from Europe, you know, since 2019, 2020, it was implemented, that EU regulation that all the cars will have DAB. So it's just being very vocal and keeping those communications flowing. But well done, thank you.
Thank you too.
Great stuff. Okay, let's move on to another topic, and I think this has sort of come out from what we've just been discussing. You know, certainly you need to have your coverage right before you launch. You do a countrywide launch, for example. But what goes with that launch, and I'm sort of doing the end of the rollout process rather than the beginning. We'll go back to that in a minute. Within a launch, you need to have a significant marketing campaign to actually communicate with the listeners what the benefits are and get them on board with, you know, going and buying radios, for example. In some countries, there's already some services. So I'm going to go to Lawrie now, who has been establishing a new service in Norfolk, and I'm sure in other areas too. And I'm just wondering how the community sector got on board with marketing the new services in the small scale DAB in Norfolk in the UK. What did they do to actually get you know, active and rapid traction for these new services on DAB? So Lawrie, could you give us some feedback on that, please?
Yes, it's very interesting, Les. Some of the services which have come onto our multiplex are brand new broadcasters, but even those have probably had some online experience. So their own online promotion of the fact that they were going on DAB was important. Some of the others were already on FM, and so their FM programming was running promotion that it was coming, and then that it was there. And then, of course, they interweave that into their program announcements. So instead of just saying on whatever the frequency is FM, it says on DAB, on FM, online, etc. So there's a lot of awareness generated through the actual on-air activities of the radio stations. They also at local events. So if they do run a music event, they run music events, festivals. They run pub quizzes, which are very famous things in the UK and perhaps in other parts of the world as well. General knowledge quizzes. They brand them and they put the material in at the venues. They did something quite clever a little while ago, which was that they came to a deal with a local taxi company where they branded up the taxi cars. And so that it was mentioning the stations in the on the vehicles. The vehicles were all branded up with the radio station and DAB, etc., being a part of that. And there are also a number of local magazines, What's On magazines and guides, which the community radio station has good relationships with, and so the material went in there. The other thing I would say about the UK, which has been, I think, very good, and I'm sure it was either pinched from elsewhere or it's been copied elsewhere, is that the radio sector as a whole promotes DAB very well. So there isn't really any. The BBC, for example, will talk about DAB all the time, and I think that general raising of awareness, and the commercial stations talking about DAB, raising that all the time, is very effective, and there is a knock-on effect for the smaller broadcasters.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think that's just emphasizing the fact that it's one thing to launch DAB, it's another thing to keep promoting it, to get people to move over from existing FM services, AM services to the DAB world. And my observation is once they move once, they're captured for life. They say, oh, why didn't I do this sooner? Pretty well. And I certainly know many people in that boat. So it's all about getting awareness and getting that and keeping that boat moving, I suppose you might call it. Okay, great. Thanks, Lawrie. That's good stuff. Let's move on to some other aspects of rollout. And I'm going to ask some questions of our suppliers here. LP from Panida, Oscar from Gates, and Roberto from Aldina. And it's a very general question, but I thought I'd just get your individual feedback on this particular point. And the question is sort of framed like this: what is the most important issue to consider when planning a DAB Plus rollout? So maybe LP, maybe you could go first.
All right. I think, as you mentioned recently, I think the receiver availability is one of the key features, or most important things, I think. Make sure that you have receivers for sale in supermarkets or everywhere, and talking to the importers of car, especially for countries in Asia and Arabic countries, about the receiver specification. The language support, for example, is one really important thing, I think. What else? Content, of course. Make sure that you have enough content. Let the radio stations be creative. Talking about pop-up radio stations, we have seen examples from UK where Absolute Radio, for example, they had their prime radio station on FM only, and then they launched DAB only radio stations, Absolute 80, 90, 70, 60s, whatever, which has become quite popular. And I think those kind of things are quite important.
Okay, great stuff. I'd agree with all of that.
Yep.
Maybe hand over to Oscar. What's your observations?
Thank you, Les. Okay, more or less, I'm agree with Paneda. In addition, it's very important for my point of view, the regulation. So is need to start from the government to start much more in advance before launching the service. Otherwise, even if we start to transmit, have a good coverage, but if we don't have any listener, there is not a reason for private, but also public, to broadcast the service.
Okay. I think I heard most of that. It was a bit garbled in places, sorry to say. That's all right. Thanks, Oscar. Roberto, have you got some observations from Italy to provide for us? You know, Italy's been going through the process for some years now, of course, but it's continues to expand over time. So can you give us any thoughts there, please?
Yes. From my point of view, for our experience, one of the most difficult and important aspect to be considered are the resources. I mean, often when the customer approach us asking us made some design, some project, the problem is the lack of information regarding the availability of the resources. I mean, where the tower are, the number of transmitting sites available that we can use, we can consider in our design. If there is any constraint with the neighbor countries, the neighbor regions related to the frequency plan and so on. So it's really important since the beginning to collect very good informations from the customer and receive at the beginning what is maybe for someone is some information are not important, but are really important when you plan the network. For instance, if you need to know how many radio stations you want inject in your DAB, maybe not right now, but in the future, how you want to expand your network. So it's really important to understand the resource. And when I say resource, it's a tower. If the tower are available, I mean, they've got space for new antenna and so on. And the project, I mean, the plan, what the customer want to do with the network. This is from my point of view, the basic information that we should receive from them.
Yeah, sure. Okay. I understand that. Yeah, I'm absolutely right. And certainly when you're planning transmission networks, in many countries, there's many different tower providers. So, you know, there's a whole, a lot of work, in fact, to actually talk to them and find the best options for towers, because towers can be very pricey. And certainly in a lot of the analysis I've done in different countries, you see that the lease costs of putting an antenna and transmission equipment on a tower, someone else's tower, can be a large part of the operating expenditure each year, and that all adds up over time. So
absolutely, this is really important, and you know may change several aspects of the project. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. And depending on where that tower and the site is, depends on your transmission power requirements, your ERP, your coverage patterns, and so forth. So all those things need to be considered during the rollout and in the detailed design part of that process as well.
Yeah, because if you start from a very good design, very good plan, then the rollout is, let's say, an easy job, an easy task. But if your plan is not made properly, and then during the rollout you have to solve a lot of problems. So I prefer to solve all the problem during the design than during the rollout. It's much more better and cheaper.
Yeah. Well, I understand from both yourself and other of your compatriots that Italy has been a very difficult country to design. The coverage planning, not only internally, but in particularly with international interference and coordination. And you know, that really emphasizes part of the 5 C's that our President Jacqueline Bierhorst talked about before. Communication is absolutely essential. So the last little topic I thought we might just have a little chat about is communication. And certainly in Australia, having an organization that championed DAB and brought together all the different sectors of the ecosystem, from commercial radio, public service radio, community radio, network operators, regulators, retailers, automotive. All of those parts are all very important. And I'm just wondering if there's any observations from any of our panelists here today, maybe examples of where having that, a good industry body within a country has really helped move things forward. Any takers on that one?
Yeah, I can add something to that one, Les. You know, we talk about the 5 C's as a template when rolling out DAB, and Lars Peder ran through them just a little while ago. So those are, you know, getting the content on air, the coverage, looking after the cars and receivers, etc. And those 5 C's come out of a regulatory framework and the licensing. But of course, underpinning all of that is collaboration. That's like the key ingredient that pulls everything together. It's fundamental collaboration. And in Europe, we have several examples. I won't go through them all here on this webinar, Les, but I think a really good example is the UK. Just one, you know, and so they start off, you know, there's usually a website, and the URL preferred that a lot of countries have now is DAB plus plus dot and the letters of the country, and that's a repository, a portal for all the information, all the communication. And then there's usually a body behind that is funded, the collaboration between the stakeholders, and they're putting money in and funding. Perhaps in some cases there's government funding as well, or the broadcasters are funding, the network operator, the receiver manufacturer, those car importers, and they meet regularly on 6 weekly or quarterly basis. And it's that collaboration and communication that one side knows what's the other side's doing, that the car makers know that the broadcasters, i.e. their customers, they want to sell their cars and they want to sell a good experience. So it's vitally important to have that collaboration, vitally important that all those parts of the ecosystem join in that collaboration, that there's regular meetings. And this is something that WorldDAB is very focused on as well. And it's one of the things that we do quite well. We share a lot of information. There's DAB branding freely available, again, on our website. You know, the logo's there. All of this costs money, but it's all there. It's all been done before. There are some videos that have been done that are nicely translated into other cultures, where we talk about the benefits of DAB to the listener. So that's it. Yeah, it's that collaboration definitely is key.
Yeah, 100% agree with all of that. And that's my observation as well. The one thing I would add to that is that kickstart to get it all to start. In Australia, it was the government offering broadcasters free access to spectrum. And as soon as they heard that, everybody could see there was something in it for them. They could make, they had an opportunity to improve their business. They had an opportunity to provide more services to the public and so forth. And that was the real spark. So, you know, I think there is that educational bit right up front that needs to be focused on the broadcasters and the regulators, and somehow bringing them together to form that organization that you talked about, which is that you have them everywhere, you know, whether it's Germany or Netherlands or Poland or whatever, because they've found that's the real way of making it happen.
That's right. And that incentive to the broadcasters, and what we see as well, because some broadcasters, especially the ones that are funded through advertising, they are perhaps afraid of opening up the market, because DAB, of course, offers more services. But what we see is, and those incentives are important, is the evidence so far is that it's the incumbents who are the winners with DAB+. They're the ones who will strengthen their brand and protect their brand into the future. So that's kind of linked to the point you made, Les, about the preference and the incentives.
Absolutely, absolutely. Not that we're saying that you shouldn't have new broadcasters, absolutely, because I think that's essential to keep the whole medium healthy. Okay, look, that's fantastic. Look, we've just run out of time, so I think I'm going to push over to wrap up sessions here. So who wants to go first? Bernie, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'm happy to say, just really to say thank you to everyone who has joined this webinar series. You know, we've had consistent attendance throughout the 3 days of, you know, up around 150 delegates from across, I don't know, at least 30 countries. So that's really fantastic. And it's very encouraging to us to stay motivated in sharing the knowledge and information that we all have. Just to thank all of the speakers today for their excellent presentations and the time and effort and care put into preparing and presenting the information that you have. And thanks to the speakers in the other days as well. Thank you to my colleagues at ABU and ASBU for the excellent promotion and facilitation and organization of this webinar series. And especially thank you to you, Les, for excellent moderation and holding the show together and keeping us all in line and expertly moderating the whole session. So thanks to you. And I think, did you want to say anything, Les, before I move on to invite the other organizations to say something?
I'd just say it's a pleasure to help move DAB forward around the world. Yeah, I'm an avid supporter myself, as you know. I love radio. I love music. Yeah, I'm a musician too. So, you know, that's the way it goes. So hopefully these sessions that we do help all of the people that participate and attend these sessions. And I hope people can take something positive away and act on it and, you know, move forward in your country. That's the ultimate reward for me. So yeah, thank you, Bernie, and I'll go back to the others now. Thanks.
Okay, you're welcome. And just before I do move on to the others, there were some questions about presentations and recordings. So just to repeat that the recordings will be shared after this event. We will send an email on Monday with a link to all the video recordings and the PowerPoint PDFs of the PowerPoint presentations. And of course, we are always here and we want to hear from you with your questions and to continue the discussion. So now I'd like to hand over to Dr. Adnan Salhab from the Arab States Broadcasting Union for some closing remarks.
Yes, thank you. I just would like to say that after these 3 days of intensive efforts exerted by everybody, I feel happy with the results we achieved of conducting this workshop on DAB+. I believe that we have got a lot of knowledge and shared experience from all. So on behalf of ASBU and in my name, I would like to thank ASBU and WorldDAB for the great fruitful cooperation, all colleagues from ABU and WorldDAB for the excellent organization of this workshop, all experts for their valuable presentation and successful contribution. Finally, my special thanks go to all participants for their patience, interest, and high level of interactivity. Finally, we are pleased that this event is a testament of our shared commitment and dedication to continuing this successful cooperation with ABU and WorldDAB to achieve even greater milestones in the future. Again, thank you to all of you and have an exciting summer holidays.
Thank you, Dr. Adnan, for those lovely remarks. Well appreciated. And now I'd like to invite Dr. Vaisal Binbay from the Asia Pacific Broadcasting Union to say his final remarks.
Okay, just agreeing and continuing from where Dr. Adnan left, I'd like to thank all the stakeholders here at WorldDAB, and I'd like to thank ASBU. I'd like to thank all the speakers from all over the world, actually. And I'd like to thank the participants, first of all. Actually, this is very fruitful collaboration. I think by doing so, this kind of events We are fulfilling our main existence and fulfilling our main duty as an unions, ASBU and us and WorldDAB also, to actually serving and informing, getting most updated information for the participants and our members, what I mean. I hope this is, of course, very went well from our side, but I'm hoping so. This was fruitful as well for the participants, because this is the main point to access the broadcasters who are working on the field, and this is what we are actually doing in now as a subject. What the DAB Plus is the one of the way of the moving forward process of nature part of moving forward for the digitalization and the digital transformation for all over the countries. By serving our members, we are basically and fundamentally serving the public, because they are the public broadcasters mainly. So thank you all for serving the public, and I think we did well. Thank you. And see you next time.
I would agree. I would agree. Thank you, everybody. And we will see you soon. See you next time. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.